Chapter 10. Social Institutions, Politics, Education, and Religion. What are social institutions? Social institutions are systems and structures that shape the activities of groups and individuals in society. You can't visit a social institution. It is a structure, not a place. Politics, education, and religion are examples of institutions. Social structures influence our lives, but they also influence other social structures. For instance, can you think of ways that politics might influence education, or education might influence religion? What is politics? Politics, the methods and tactics of managing a nation or state, as well as administering and controlling its internal and external affairs. Government, the formal, organized agency that exercises power and control in modern society, especially through the creation and enforcement of laws. Politics often refers to administering and controlling the affairs of the nation or state, but the term can also refer to the attitudes and activities of certain groups or individuals. In the United States, we have various levels of government, including federal, state, county, local, and so on. What is politics? Power is the ability to impose one's will on others. Authority is the non-coercive, legitimate exercise of power. If you are moving to a new apartment and you need help moving your stuff, you might convince one of your friends to help out. You're imposing your will on your friend, or exercising your power over that person. In this example, though, you don't have any authority in the United States. An obvious example of authority is a police officer, a person who has legitimate state-backed power. You could also think of a resident assistant in the dorms, principals at schools, or any other person in a position that formalizes or legitimizes their non-coercive exercise of power. Authoritarianism, a system of government by and for a small number of elites that does not include representation of ordinary citizens. A dictatorship is a type of authoritarianism where the leader typically seizes power rather than being selected or elected. This form of government gives one person the power to rule without the consent of the citizens. Totalitarianism is the most extreme and modern form of authoritarianism, in which the government seeks to control every aspect of citizens' lives. Oftentimes, these regimes stay in power by circulating propaganda, information intended to influence people's beliefs, through government-controlled mass media. A monarchy is government by a king or queen with succession of rulers kept within the family. Absolute monarchies typically have complete authority over their subjects. Constitutional monarchs are royal figures whose powers are defined by a political charter and limited by a parliament or other governing body. A democracy is a political system in which all citizens have the right to participate. The American political system prides itself on being a democracy, a government that confers power to the people. Despite controversy about how to count voter turnout, many worry that fewer eligible voters actually vote in the United States than in some comparable democracies. Pluralism, a system of political power where a wide variety of individuals and groups have equal access to resources and power. Sociologists have two answers to the question of who rules America: the pluralist theory of power and the idea of a power elite. Many people like the idea of pluralism because the nature of the system is to embrace diversity of views and perspectives. C. Wright Mills coined the term power elite, a relatively small number of people who control the economic, political, and military institutions of a society. Some people argue that the United States has a power elite because there are a relatively small number of people who each have several important positions. For instance, Dick Cheney, a former vice president of the United States, was affiliated with a multi-billion-dollar corporation that made a profit from an international conflict. These kinds of connections, according to Mills, keep the powerful in power and make access to power very difficult for an outsider without prior connections. Special interest groups are organizations that raise and spend money to influence elected officials or public opinion. This table shows the top 10 spenders on lobbying from 1998 to 2015. Sociological perspectives on social institutions. This chart will list 3 theories and their approach to social institutions. Take a moment to review this chart. Pause the video if necessary. In addition to special interest groups, the mass media also impacts politics. For instance, many people form their beliefs based on information from opinion leaders. Opinion leaders are high-profile people who interpret events and influence the public. The free press was very important to the drafters of the Constitution and was originally intended to inform and educate the populace and to serve as a watchdog on government. The media continue to play a key role in the political process, but too often they focus on surface perceptions to the detriment of substantive debate. These photos from the media are telling you about 3 different stories. Do you know the story behind these photos? How does news affect politics? Education is the process by which a society transmits knowledge, values, and expectations to its members so they can function in society. Schooling began to be considered a necessity for preparing children to enter modern industrial occupations in the beginning of the 19th century. Schooling serves a number of important functions for society. The transmission of knowledge, learning to follow society's rules and to respect authority, being socialized to develop other qualities that will eventually make people efficient and obedient workers. The transmission of knowledge is a manifest function. That means it is an obvious function of education. Obviously, you learn to read, write, do math, and so on. Other functions are not so obvious, and those are called latent functions. Examples of latent functions include learning to follow society's rules and to respect authority, and being socialized to develop other qualities that will eventually make us efficient and obedient workers. These goals aren't on the class syllabus, but students learn them through interactions with teachers and others within the system. Educational institutions also help to reproduce the inequalities seen in society. The hidden curriculum describes the values and behaviors that students learn indirectly over the course of their schooling because of the educational system's structure and teaching methods. It is clear that while education does benefit everyone, it unfortunately does not benefit everyone equally. Sociologists have long been interested in the hidden curriculum, which is related to the latent functions of education we just discussed. This includes things such as obedience to authority and strict adherence to norms. Many argue that the hidden curriculum reinforces and reproduces conditions of social inequality in society. In The Credential Society, Randall Collins argues that reproducing society's existing class structure is a true function of education. The Pygmalion effect, the idea that teachers' attitudes about their students unintentionally influence their academic performance. Rosenthal and Jacobson's symbolic interactionist study of education suggested that teachers' attitudes about their students unintentionally influence their academic performance. When teachers expected students to succeed, the students indeed tended to improve. Kozel's ethnography, Savage Inequalities, contends that because schools are funded by local property taxes, children in poor neighborhoods are trapped in poor schools, which reinforces inequality. Kozel documents the significant difference among America's schools. The highest spending districts have twice as many art, music, and foreign language teachers, 75% more physical education teachers, 50% more nurses, school librarians, guidance counselors, and psychologists, and 60% more personnel in school administration than the low-spending districts. Many believe that America's educational system is in crisis, though there is little agreement on how to fix the problem. Some attempts have included early college high schools, homeschooling, school vouchers, and charter schools. Early college high schools, institutions that blend high school and college into a coherent educational program in which students earn both a high school diploma and 2 years of college credit towards a bachelor's degree. Homeschooling, the education of children by their parents at home. Distance learning includes any educational course or program in which the teacher and students do not meet together in the classroom, a situation increasingly available over the internet. Homeschooling has grown steadily in popularity since the 1980s. In 2007 to 2008, it was estimated that there were more than 2 million homeschooled children in the United States. The academic achievement of homeschooled students, on average, was significantly above that of publicly schooled children, even if their parents were not certified teachers. School vouchers are payments from the government to parents whose children attend failing public schools to help parents pay for private school tuition. Charter schools. Public schools run by private entities to give parents greater control over their children's education. What is religion? Religion includes any institutionalized system of shared beliefs, propositions, and ideas held on the basis of faith. Rituals, practices based on those beliefs that identify a relationship between the sacred, holy, divine, or supernatural, and the profane, ordinary, mundane, or everyday. There are many different kinds of religions in the world, but they all share these same basic tenets. Sociologists do not evaluate the truth of any religion, but rather study the ways that religions shape and are shaped by cultural institutions and the ways that religions influence and are influenced by the behaviors of individuals. It is very important that as sociologists we take a step back from our own beliefs and employ our sociological imagination to understand the values and beliefs of others. As sociologists, we are interested in society and social interactions, and we cannot understand these things without understanding the religious beliefs of people within various societies. Religion shapes everyday behavior by providing morals, values, rules, and norms for its participants. Religion gives meaning to our lives. Religion provides the opportunity to come together with others to share in group activities and identity. Again, this is true of nearly any religion. Oftentimes, the individual beliefs of religions may differ, yet the structures of the religions are similar. Religion can be made dysfunctional by promoting inequality with sexist, racist, or homophobic doctrines. On the other hand, religious organizations have also been agents of social justice and political change. In the Civil Rights era, most communications about gatherings, protests, or events to raise awareness were announced and advertised through churches. Religious composition in the United States, 2014. Take a moment and review this chart. Second largest religious tradition in each state, according to 2010. Take a moment and review this map. Religiosity is the regular practice of religious beliefs measured by church attendance. 38% of Americans report attending services weekly. Extrinsic religiosity refers to a person's public display of commitment to a religious faith. Intrinsic religiosity refers to a person's inner religious belief or personal relationship to the divine. Two groups have dramatically increased in size in recent decades. Fundamentalists, those who literally interpret texts and want to return to a time of greater religious purity. Unchurched, those who consider themselves spiritual but not religious, and who often adopt aspects of various religious traditions. In recent decades, the number of Americans who identify themselves as fundamentalists, the practice of emphasizing literal interpretations of texts, and a return to a time of greater religious purity, and unchurched, a term describing those who consider themselves spiritual but not religious, and who often adopt aspects of various religious traditions, has dramatically increased. As we can see, even religion can't be studied without examining the context, the society, the people, their attitudes, etc. And it's clear that religious practice changes over time and across cultures. Social institutions are an important part of the structure of our society. As a sociologist, it is important to understand how institutions shape our lives and how we can shape institutions as well. This concludes the lecture PowerPoint presentation for Chapter 10.